This is the Investor Mindset Podcast. It's surprising me that it's not more prolific, being that I think it's one of the most important topics that young people should be learning, but they're not. And I think back to when I was in high school or earlier, I was not learning anything about entrepreneurship or business or financial education. None of that was going on. And then as an adult, as a business owner working with Junior Achievement, other organizations like this, I've come to find that it's still missing from the curriculum. It's nonprofit companies and organizations are having to come in and have volunteers come and share their experience with classrooms just to give students a little taste of what financial education and literacy is all about. So one of the things that I think people will be surprised about, but tell us a little bit about your experience on how these young people, how these kids are really reacting to that financial independence movement.
Yeah, they react really well. I mean, when you start talking about things like early financial independence, which is something that most Americans don't know about, let alone just, young people. Most adults in our country do not know about the idea of early financial independence. So you start sharing that information with young people, which I do in my classroom. And I have an online community too of young people that are interested in these topics. Not all of them, but a lot of them, like they perk up and they're interested. Like, what are you talking about? I've never heard this concept before. I think some of them are a little skeptical at first, as they should be. Whenever someone comes up and starts talking about a topic or a strategy that just sounds a little like maybe too good to be true, I think your guard should come up. But once I start showing them, the strategies and the numbers, and I bring in guest speakers who have already reached financial independence and they're in their, 30s or 40s or even younger, then they're like, you know what, this is legit. And they trust me as their teacher. I'm not, trying to sell them anything. So they do pay attention and they do love to learn. And a shout out to you, Stephen. Recognize you came into my classroom and talked about real estate investing and some of the strategies you've used to have success. And my students ate it up. They love hearing about people who are not just talking about it, but actually doing it. And kudos to you for taking time to share your story with my students. Thank you very much.
Well, it was my pleasure, but I want to challenge the listeners, for everyone who's out there who is listening right now. How can you go and speak to some young people and share your experience regardless of where you're at in your life? Because I can remember growing up, lower middle class family, definitely not hearing a lot about entrepreneurship in my world, not hearing a lot about other options outside of maybe going blue collar, or if I'm lucky, going to university and going the traditional route. And so I think it is such a necessity for us to be able to go and bring this idea of the investor mindset, bring this idea of the entrepreneurial mindset into these classrooms. And one of the best ways to do that is being able to be that model or that mentor to a person, even just for a moment, to share those ideas. So I encourage anyone who's listening, take a challenge, go to Junior Achievement, go and find a local classroom. Maybe you have, kids that you are already connected to a district and you can do that. I encourage you guys to do that, because this is how you start planting those seeds, and you'll never know what is going to end up being harvested from those initial seeds. So talk to us a little bit about how do we plant those seeds with students, with young people that are in our lives or we're connected to, what is working as far as getting people engaged and excited about this topic?
Yeah. And I'll answer that question, speaking to the parents out there. Although anybody who has a teenager or young person in their life can employ most of these ideas. So, parents out there who have teenagers, you're probably already passing along, more than the average parent, just by the fact that they're listening to this podcast. I'm guessing they have some financial literacy or a high level of that. So they're probably already doing a pretty good job. But if they're not doing these things, they can start doing them. So number one, I encourage parents to open up the books of the small business that is their household and sit their kids down and show them, here's where all the money is. Here's where all the money comes from. Here's all the income we have, the revenue streams for the household, whether that's one stream or 10, share them all, explain them all, and then go into the credits, the debits and the credits of the business. So here's where the money is going out. Here's the monthly bills we have. Here's the loans that we have to make payments on. And show them the spreadsheet. Have them click the mouse to pay the bill and to submit the payment. And include them in that every month when you sit down and balance your checkbook and go over your credit card statements. Include them in those conversations. And you know what? Include them in the strategic decisions of where that household is going in the future. If you're going to take a big vacation, talk to your kids about budgeting for it. Put them in charge, say, okay, you need to do some research. How much is that hotel going to cost? How much are the plane tickets going to cost? And it's age dependent, of course. If they're 9, probably they're not going to do that. But if they're in their 15, 16, 17, they can do some searching and find some prices and come back to you and say, here's what I found. Absolutely. Parents should be adding their children onto their credit card accounts as an authorized user. That's a big one. That starts building that young person's credit score before they're 18. And then as soon as that young person turns 18, have them apply for their own credit card in their own name. Now, obviously, teach them the strategies that are needed to handle a credit card responsibly. But I mean, honestly, do you want your child making credit card mistakes when they're 16 living at home or when they're 22 off on their own? Those mistakes at home are easy to fix and they're probably not going to be too large. Allow them to make those mistakes. Allow them to go over the budget you gave them. Allow them maybe to miss a payment. If they're in charge of making the payments for your credit card, have them miss a payment and then show them how much that costs them in fees from the credit card company and interest. And just have money discussions. A great topic I like is sitting around the dinner table or driving in the car, say, if we won the lottery and let's say we got $100,000 from the lottery today, what would we do with that money and why would we do it? And let's talk about the pros and cons of all those decisions. And that's a fun conversation to have. Everyone likes to think about coming into a windfall of money. I wouldn't make it $1 million because that's almost too much. But if we got $100,000, where's that money going to go? Where do you want to spend it? Where do you want to save it? Where do you want to invest it? And why? And those conversations can lead into, many more conversations down the road.
Yeah, these are super actionable things, and it's giving young people an opportunity to actually learn and apply some of these ideas before they get out into the world. Because you got to think about it. How many young people go off to college? They don't know anything about what it's costing. Their parents are paying for everything, or they're not. And they're taking out huge amounts of loans and they're responsible for paying those back at some point, but they don't really have any financial understanding about what they're doing. And it isn't until years later, if ever, that they end up discovering how big of mistakes they've made earlier or what they could have been doing differently.
Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.